Today I'll be exposing the Philippine retirement trap. Welcome to the channel if you're here for the first time, and welcome back if you've been here before. What I'm about to reveal will completely destroy the fantasy you've been sold about retiring in the Philippines. Across Metro Manila, Cebu and Davao right now, tens of thousands of Western retirees are living here, and the vast majority are heading toward absolute disaster. There's a staggering 76% washout rate within 5 years that nobody in the tourism industry will ever admit to. Before this video ends, you'll discover the main critical traps that bankrupt expat dreams, plus the one counterintuitive strategy that separates those who thrive from those who flee home broke. This isn't your typical, the Philippines is amazing travel content. What I'm sharing here could save you from total financial devastation. Look at this, 65 Philippine pesos for lumpia, a massage for 250 Philippine pesos, beaches that look like screensavers come to life. This is what fills up your Instagram feed, right? This is the bait that hooks you. But there's a brutal reality they deliberately hide from you. But let me tell you about Gerald, an Australian retiree, 61 years old. He arrived in Cebu 14 months ago with $58,000 in savings. Want to know his current balance? Under $6,200. And Gerald's far from alone in this nightmare. Records show that the Australian Embassy in Manila, they process roughly 280 emergency repatriation cases annually. Do the math, that's more than 5 desperate Australians every week flying home completely broke. You might want to say that the emergency repatriation can include a wide range of issues. But how many people gets their passport stolen or has a death of a relative that they need to fly back to? I mean, which category of Australians travel to the Philippines the most? Obviously, it's the expats, and that's exactly my point. These are almost all expats. And the affordable paradise they sold you, it's an elaborate illusion designed to drain every dollar you have. Because here's reality, nobody survives long-term on 65 Philippine peso street food. Not as a Westerner, not sustainably. The moment you want recognizable food from home, air conditioning that actually cools the room, or medical care you can trust with your life, welcome to what I call the foreigner tax. And that tax will bankrupt you faster than you can imagine. Here's how the housing trap works in reality. You're browsing condos online in a typical Quezon City building. You see listings showing Filipinos renting one-bedroom units for 15,000 Philippine pesos monthly. Sounds affordable, right? You pick up the phone to inquire. Suddenly that same unit, identical layout, same floor, same building amenities, jumps to 28,000 Philippine pesos. They just slapped on an 87% markup purely because you're foreign and they know you'll pay it. Let me break down what life actually costs here. Not the fantasy budget from travel blogs, but reality. Bare survival mode. You're sharing a place with roommates in a local neighborhood far from expat areas, eating exclusively at carinderias and street vendors, 0 Western restaurants, getting around by jeepney, tricycle and buses, no private transportation, using government hospitals only with basic PhilHealth coverage, 0 international insurance backup, no entertainment budget, no travel, no safety net. You're likely to spend around 48,000 to 68,000 Philippine pesos monthly, for a comfortable living, your own one-bedroom apartment in a decent area. Mixing local food with occasional Western meals and dining out sometimes. Taking Grab when needed but still using public transport regularly. Private hospital access with basic insurance coverage. Some entertainment, occasional weekend trips, a small emergency fund building. You'll be spending around 110,000 to 165,000 Philippine pesos monthly. And for standard Western lifestyle, 2-bedroom condo in Makati, BGC or Alabang. Regular Western food, dining out frequently at expat restaurants, either owning a car or using Grab constantly without thinking about cost, comprehensive international health insurance with premium hospital access, Western-style entertainment, shopping, regular travel around the region. You're spending nothing less than 200,000 to 310,000 Philippine pesos monthly. In summary, for survival mode, you'll be spending an average of $950. For a comfortable living, it'll be around $2,000. And for a standard Western lifestyle, you're likely to spend between $3,450 to $5,345 US. But costs are just the beginning of how they get you. Let's talk about something that destroys more expats financially than anything else. The romance scam industry. This isn't some random Tinder catfish situation. This is organized, professional, devastatingly effective. These aren't desperate bar girls. These are educated women. College graduates, some with professional jobs, who've turned relationship fraud into a sophisticated operation. The approach is perfect. You meet an attractive Filipina, maybe late 20s or early 30s. She's working as a teacher, or in a call center, or running a small online business. She's not immediately asking for anything. She seems genuinely interested in you as a person. Months pass, real feelings seem to develop. You're thinking this might actually be legitimate. Then life happens. Her younger brother needs tuition money for college, just 35,000 Philippine pesos. Her mother needs medication that PhilHealth won't cover. 52,000 Philippine pesos. Her small sari-sari store needs inventory capital. 80,000 Philippine pesos. Every request is reasonable, every situation is urgent but not catastrophic. Every promise of repayment sounds sincere. Meet Douglas, a 59-year-old retired firefighter from California. Over 22 months, he transferred 4.3 million Philippine pesos to a woman he met in Dumaguete. They were planning to open a beach resort together. She disappeared 2 weeks before their supposed business registration appointment. He later discovered through a private investigator that she was simultaneously running near-identical operations on 6 other foreign men. All the family emergencies were fabricated. The business opportunity was pure fiction. His entire retirement savings gone. Here's something unique to the Philippines that absolutely nobody talks about in those retirement paradise videos. Typhoon season. The Philippines gets hit by an average of 20 typhoons annually. Not tropical storms, full typhoons. I'm talking about mandatory evacuation orders, flooding that traps you in your condo for days, power outages lasting weeks, destroyed infrastructure, contaminated water supplies. Your insurance? Read the fine print. Acts of God exclusions eliminate most typhoon damage coverage. Let me tell you about Kenneth, a British retiree living in a beautiful beachfront condo in Leyte. Typhoon season hit hard last year. His building sustained major damage, windows blown out, water damage throughout, and electrical systems fried. His condo association hit every owner with a special assessment, 340,000 Philippine pesos per unit for emergency repairs. Payment required within 45 days or face legal action. Kenneth's savings were mostly in time deposits. Breaking them early meant massive penalties. He couldn't secure a loan as a foreigner without Filipino co-signers. He ended up selling his condo at a 38% loss just to cover the assessment and have enough left to relocate. 3 years of retirement planning destroyed by one typhoon season. And it's not just physical damage. Your monthly costs explode during typhoon season. Emergency supplies, backup power, water purification, emergency accommodations if your place becomes uninhabitable, emergency flights if you need to evacuate the region. Budget an extra 25,000 to 45,000 Philippine pesos monthly just for typhoon preparedness if you're living in high-risk areas. Then immigration. September 2024. Everything shifted overnight. Fresh regulations, updated documentation requirements, stricter enforcement. Literally thousands of expats woke up to discover they were technically in violation of their visa status. Listen very carefully to what changed. The SRRV retirement visa that everyone said was easy and permanent? They've tightened enforcement dramatically. You now need 850,000 Philippine pesos deposited in the Philippine bank if you're under 50. If you're over 50, it drops to 360,000 Philippine pesos. But here's the trap. They verify that balance quarterly now, not just at application. Drop below that threshold even temporarily. Your visa status gets flagged for review. The 13th marriage visa everyone said was the golden ticket. Rejection rates jumped 52% compared to 2 years ago. Why the spike? They're now requiring extensive relationship documentation, photos spanning multiple years, affidavits from neighbors, proof of combined finances, social media history verification. And here's what terrifies people. Unannounced home visits by Bureau of Immigration officers. They show up at random times to verify you're actually living together as a married couple. Fail that surprise inspection. Application denied, no appeals. The tourist visa extension game that people played for years, completely dead. They're now tracking overstays electronically and sharing data with other ASEAN countries. Get flagged in the Philippines, you might find yourself blacklisted from entering Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam. The risk isn't worth it anymore. But here's the part that should absolutely terrify you. Even when you meet every single requirement on their checklist, they maintain full discretionary power to deny you. No detailed explanation required. No formal appeals process exists, just a stamp that says denied and you're done. Let me tell you about Stephen, a New Zealand businessman who operated successfully in Manila for 13 years. Filipino wife, 3 kids in local international schools, thriving import-export company. Bureau of Immigration changed one regulation about continuous residency requirements for business visa holders. Stephen had been travelling frequently for business. Completely normal, right? Wrong. They determined his travel pattern violated continuous residency, 30 days to liquidate his business interests and exit the country. 13 years of building a life, erased in a month. His Filipino wife couldn't legally inherit his business shares due to foreign ownership restrictions. His kids lost their school placements. He had to emergency sell his 2 condos and took a combined loss of 6.8 million Philippine pesos in equity because desperate sellers get slaughtered in this market. Speaking of businesses, let's discuss what I call the entrepreneurial graveyard. Philippine foreign business and land ownership laws. There's this Korean restaurant in BGC, successful place, always packed. Here's what most customers don't know. The Korean owner doesn't actually own his restaurant. Philippine law caps foreign ownership at 40% for most business categories. The remaining 60% must be owned by Filipino citizens. Sounds manageable, right? Just partner with trustworthy Filipinos. Completely wrong. Those Filipino partners legally control your business. They hold majority voting rights. They can override your decisions. They can vote to sell assets. They can remove you from operational control. And this happens constantly. I'm not talking about rare cases. Last year, I personally documented 38 cases of foreign entrepreneurs being systematically pushed out of businesses they built from scratch. Average financial loss per case, 7.2 million Philippine pesos. How many successfully recovered anything through legal action? 0. Absolutely 0. Here's the standard playbook. Phase 1, the honeymoon. Your Filipino partners seem completely trustworthy and reliable. Your lawyer assures you this ownership structure is standard practice, nothing to worry about. First 2 or 3 years operate smoothly, profits are good, everyone's happy. Phase 2, unquery. The pressure. Business becomes genuinely profitable, real money starts flowing. Filipino partners start pushing for expanded roles and larger profit distributions. Small conflicts emerge over business direction and spending decisions. Tensions escalate gradually. Phase 3, the hostile takeover. Filipino partners leverage their legal majority to force through major changes without your consent. You get systematically squeezed out of daily operations. Assets get transferred to majority Filipino ownership. You're left with a 40% stake in a business you no longer control. You're not on and that minority stake is virtually worthless because nobody will buy it. Take Michelle, a Canadian entrepreneur who built a successful chain of 3 coffee shops in Cebu, worth approximately 11 million Philippine pesos. Her Filipino business partner, someone she'd known for 6 years, someone she trusted completely, simply called a shareholders meeting and voted her out. Took control of all 3 locations. Legal? Absolutely. Ethical? You decide. Michelle's lawyer told her fighting it in Philippine courts would cost more than her 40% stake was worth. She walked away with nothing, but wait, it gets even more insidious. The land investment scam specifically targets retirees. Here's how it works. You fall in love with the Philippines. You want to build your dream retirement home. But foreigners cannot own land here. That's Philippine law, very clear. So, helpful locals explain the common solution. Marry a Filipina or put the land in a trusted Filipino friend's name. You pay for everything, land purchase, construction, furnishings. Maybe 8 to 15 million Philippine pesos total investment. Everything's in someone else's name legally, but you have an agreement. Then relationships sour. Marriages fail at that 65% rate I mentioned. Friendships end, and suddenly you discover that agreement you relied on. Worthless. The land, the house, everything. It legally belongs to the Filipino whose name is on the title. You have 0 legal recourse. You can't force a sale. You can't claim ownership. You just lost everything. Martin, a 64-year-old American, built his dream retirement home in Batangas. Cost him 9.2 million Philippine pesos. Put the land in his girlfriend's name because she was trustworthy and they were definitely getting married soon. 3 years later, they had a fight. She kicked him out of his own house. Her family moved in. His lawyer explained the brutal truth. He has no legal standing whatsoever. That house he built, not his. That land he paid for, not his. He's currently living in a cheap studio apartment in Manila, trying to figure out how to rebuild his life at 64 with almost nothing left. Now let's discuss what actually destroys more expats than financial problems. Complete cultural isolation. This goes far beyond not understanding Tagalog. This is about being fundamentally locked out of the social operating system that governs everything around you. You know that concept of haya, shame or embarrassment. It's not just about being polite at parties. This is the core principle that dictates every single social interaction. Violate it publicly, and you're socially executed, permanently. I watched Henrik, a 58-year-old Danish architect, have a complete meltdown at a BDO bank branch because a transaction was taking forever. He started raising his voice, demanding to speak to managers, making a scene. The staff smiled politely and processed his transaction. But here's what happened next. His account got flagged. Suddenly, every transaction required additional verification. His ATM card had mysterious technical issues. Other businesses in the area started treating him differently. In Filipino culture, public anger equals instant social death. You become that angry foreigner that everyone knows about. Locals stop wanting to do business with you. Neighbors avoid interaction. Even other expats distance themselves because they don't want guilt by association. Philippine society operates on intricate social hierarchies that aren't written down anywhere. Age, education level, economic status, family connections, regional origin, all of these create invisible rankings. As a foreigner, you exist completely outside this system. You're not at the top. You're not at the bottom. You're simply invisible. That invisibility destroys people psychologically. Your opinions carry zero weight in barangay decisions that directly affect your life. Your complaints go unheard or get politely dismissed. Your needs never get prioritized. You're a permanent outsider watching society function around you without any ability to participate meaningfully. Next is the language barrier. Nobody wants to admit Tagalog isn't just different vocabulary. It's a completely different linguistic structure with formal and informal registers that shift based on age, status, and relationship dynamics. Use the wrong pronoun with someone and you've either deeply insulted them or made yourself look ridiculous. I invested 8 months intensively studying Tagalog. I can handle basic market transactions and casual conversations, but I still cannot understand legal documents, medical terminology, government paperwork, or rapid conversational Tagalog when Filipinos are talking among themselves. Everything important requires a translator, and every translator represents another point of failure, another person you're dependent on, another potential security risk with your private information. Picture yourself, you're educated, articulate, professionally accomplished in English, but in daily Filipino life, you're reduced to pointing at menu items and using hand gestures like a child learning to communicate. That's not an occasional inconvenience, that's your permanent reality. You can't participate in nuanced discussions about politics, economics, or culture. You can't understand the layers of meaning in jokes and humor. You can't effectively advocate for yourself in disputes or negotiations. You become intellectually isolated inside your own existence. Here's something that catches expats completely off guard. Extended family obligations in Filipino culture. When you marry a Filipina or even just date seriously, you're not joining a relationship with one person. You're becoming financially responsible for an entire extended family network. Her younger sibling's education, you're expected to contribute. Her parents' medical expenses, you're the backup plan. Cousin's wedding, you're helping with costs. Nephew needs a laptop for school. Everyone looks at you. This isn't manipulation or gold digging. This is normal cultural expectation. Families take care of each other, and if you have money, you share it. Period. Nobody explains this clearly before you arrive. You think you're budgeting for 2 people? Actually, you're financially supporting 8 to 12 people indirectly. I met Raymond, a 56-year-old American, married to a Filipina from Mindanao. He estimated his actual monthly expenses at around 85,000 Philippine pesos for the 2 of them. Reality. When he tracked everything for 6 months, tuition contributions, medical help, emergency loans to relatives, birthday celebrations, funeral expenses, he was actually spending 167,000 Philippine pesos monthly, almost double his planned budget, and he couldn't say no without causing massive family conflict and putting his marriage at risk. This isn't unique to Raymond. This is standard Filipino family culture. If you're not prepared for it, financially and emotionally, it will destroy your budget and your relationship simultaneously. Let's talk about healthcare, specifically the insurance nightmare nobody warns you about adequately. Yes, the Philippines has quality hospitals. Makati Medical Center, St. Luke's, Asian Hospital, Idus. These are genuinely good facilities with competent doctors. But here's what the medical tourism websites deliberately omit. The system is designed for short-term medical tourists paying cash, not long-term foreign residents needing ongoing coverage. Philippine private hospitals operate strictly cash first. No payment, no treatment, 0 exceptions. I've seen internal pricing from major Manila hospitals. Gallbladder surgery, 285,000 Philippine pesos. Cardiac bypass, 1.8 million Philippine pesos. Cancer treatment, starting at 3.5 million Philippine pesos and climbing rapidly from there. And payment is required up front before they begin treatment. But I have insurance, you're thinking. Let me explain how insurance companies in the Philippines destroy you. Most policies contain exclusions specifically engineered to deny your most expensive claims. Pre-existing conditions, almost always excluded entirely. That high blood pressure you manage with medication, pre-existing condition. That type 2 diabetes you control with diet, pre-existing condition. That minor heart issue from 5 years ago, pre-existing condition, and now your entire cardiac system is excluded from coverage. Let me tell you about Brian, a 68-year-old Australian living in Makati. He had what he thought was comprehensive health insurance, expensive policy, reputable company. He developed prostate cancer. His insurance company denied the claim. Why? During his pre-arrival medical exam 2 years earlier, his PSA levels were slightly elevated. They classified this as a pre-existing condition. Brian spent his final 4.1 million Philippine pesos on treatment. His sister had to crowdfund his cremation costs. And age-based exclusions will destroy you. Most policies in the Philippines dramatically spike premiums after 65. After 70, obtaining new coverage becomes nearly impossible. After 75, you're essentially uninsurable at any price. If you're 54 and planning ahead strategically, this is manageable. If you're 67 and just arriving in Manila assuming you'll figure it out, you're one medical emergency away from total bankruptcy. Let's discuss the thing that destroys more expats psychologically than any other factor: crushing, suffocating loneliness. Relocating to the Philippines means abandoning everything that fundamentally defines your identity, your professional reputation built over decades, your friendship network cultivated since childhood, your cultural touchstones that give context and meaning to conversations. There's this guy I see regularly, well, let's call him Paul. He sits at the same bar in Ermita every Thursday and Sunday without fail. Been doing it for 9 years straight. Hasn't video called his adult children in over 3 years. His Filipino wife left him 2 years ago. He speaks maybe 40 words of Tagalog total, and Paul isn't some unusual outlier. He represents thousands of expats trapped in this exact pattern. According to mental health organizations working with expats in Metro Manila, depression rates among foreign retirees run approximately 320% higher than their home country baseline rates. Suicide rates, nearly 3 times higher than comparable age demographics back home. Imagine this daily reality. You're intelligent, well-educated, articulate and witty in English, but in everyday Filipino interactions you're functionally reduced to pointing at objects and using exaggerated facial expressions like a toddler learning basic communication. That's not an occasional frustration, that's your permanent existence here. You can't engage in sophisticated discussions about philosophy, politics or culture. You can't understand the subtle layers in Filipino humor. You can't effectively express complex emotions like frustration, disappointment or nuanced disagreement. You become intellectually imprisoned inside your own daily life. Most failed expats retreat into what I call expat bubbles, artificial communities of other foreigners hiding from Philippine reality. You see them clustered in the same bars, the same restaurants, the same condo complexes. They only socialize with other expats, they only eat Western food, they only consume English media, they never learn the language, they never understand the culture. These bubbles feel comfortable initially. Finally, people who understand your references, speak your language, share your cultural background, but it's a trap. You're not actually living in the Philippines, you're living in a tiny artificial recreation of your home country, surrounded by other people, equally isolated from reality. And these communities breed toxicity. Constant complaining about how things are back home. Endless criticism of Filipino culture and customs. Bitter divorced men spreading horror stories about Filipinos. Failed entrepreneurs blaming everyone but themselves. It becomes an echo chamber of negativity and failure. I watched Jeffrey, a 62-year-old Canadian, get completely consumed by this bubble. Arrived in Angeles City with decent savings and genuine optimism. Within 8 months he was spending every evening at the same expat bar, drinking with the same group of bitter divorced guys, complaining about the same problems. He stopped trying to learn Tagalog, stopped exploring Philippine culture, stopped building any genuine connections with locals. 2 years later, Jeffrey's money was gone, blown on bar tabs, and supporting a girlfriend who disappeared the moment his cash dried up. His expat friends vanished when he couldn't buy rounds anymore. He ended up sleeping on a friend's couch for 3 months, until his family scraped together money for a flight home. He's now living in his nephew's basement in Edmonton, completely broke at 64, with nothing to show for his Philippine adventure except bitterness and regret. Here's something that will break your heart if you really think about it: the systematic destruction of family bonds across generations. Moving to the Philippines doesn't just affect your life, it severs your connection to your children, your grandchildren, your siblings, your aging parents, your grandson's first day of kindergarten, your daughter's promotion celebration, your granddaughter's soccer championship, Your son's divorce when he desperately needed emotional support. Your mother's 80th birthday surrounded by family. You miss everything, every milestone, every crisis, every moment that matters. I met Walter, a grandfather who relocated to Bohol 7 years ago. His granddaughter was diagnosed with leukemia. The family needed help, emotional support, financial assistance, physical help with daily care routines during treatment. But Walter was 13,000 kilometers away across the Pacific Ocean. He tried desperately to return home to Colorado to help, but he'd been gone so long that he couldn't afford to live there anymore. Housing costs had tripled in his old neighborhood. His social security payment of $2,100 monthly wasn't remotely sufficient. His savings were locked up in Philippine investments, a condo and multiple time deposits that he couldn't liquidate quickly without catastrophic losses. So Walter's trapped in an impossible situation. Can't afford to permanently return to the US. Can't afford to meaningfully help his family from the Philippines. He watches his granddaughter fight cancer through choppy video calls on a phone screen, feeling completely helpless and useless while his daughter struggles alone. The guilt is destroying him psychologically. Filipino foreign marriages carry a documented 68% failure rate within the first 5 years. Not 68% experience problems, 68% end completely. The causes are depressingly predictable and repetitive. Fundamental cultural differences about money, management, and family obligations. Intense pressure from both families pulling in opposite directions. Visa-related stress poisoning the relationship foundation. Language barriers preventing deep emotional intimacy and understanding. Radically incompatible expectations about gender roles, household responsibilities, and decision-making authority. When these marriages inevitably collapse, and statistically they usually do, the foreigner loses absolutely everything. The house? Can't own land as a foreigner, so it's gone. The business? You only owned 40% anyway, and now it's worthless. Sometimes even access to your own biological children gets restricted or entirely eliminated through Filipino family court decisions that heavily favor Filipino mothers. When family emergencies explode back home, expats are completely helpless. Last-minute international flights cost 80,000 to 150,000 Philippine pesos. Visa complications create delays. Asset liquidation takes weeks minimum. Currency exchange and international transfers eat up days while your family is in crisis. Victoria, a British expat living in Davao, received a frantic call that her father had suffered a massive stroke. She needed to fly home to Manchester immediately, but her savings sat locked in Philippine time deposit accounts with severe early withdrawal penalties. Her condo couldn't sell quickly. She'd been trying for 6 months already. She had to borrow money from other expats at a 22% annual interest just to purchase an emergency flight. By the time Victoria finally arrived in Manchester, her father had already died 2 days earlier. The funeral had already happened. She'd missed saying goodbye. She'd missed supporting her mother and siblings when they needed her most. The guilt and regret are something she'll carry forever. Let's talk about something that silently drains your budget every single month. The brutal tropical climate. It's 37 degrees Celsius right now. That's 99 degrees Fahrenheit with 82% humidity. The heat index hitting 44 degrees, and this is supposed to be the cooler part of the year. Your air conditioning runs non-stop, 24 hours daily, 11 months per year. There's no, oh, I'll just open the windows and use a fan option. You'll be drenched in sweat within minutes. What does that electricity consumption actually cost? Try 12,000 to 22,000 Philippine pesos monthly. Nobody ever mentions this in those live cheap in paradise budget videos. Heat exhaustion requiring hospitalization. Severe dehydration leading to kidney stress. Cardiovascular strain from constant heat exposure. Skin cancer rates among foreign expats here run 480% higher than back home. Dr. Arreyes at Manila Doctors Hospital told me they see 60 to 90 heat-related expat emergencies every single month. Predominantly patients over 63 who completely underestimated how this climate would impact their aging bodies. The expats who survive long-term? They budget seriously for climate adaptation. Air conditioning costs in every monthly budget without exception. Medical-grade air purifiers running constantly. Regular preventive health screenings become mandatory, not optional luxury. Now let's talk about the survivors. What makes these set of people different? After 3 years researching this and speaking with a lot of expats, both successful and failed, I discovered something remarkable. The few percent who genuinely succeed long-term, they all implement 3 core strategies that failures never even consider. Strategy 1, they never put everything in one basket. Emergency fund, minimum 2.8 million Philippine pesos maintained in their home country, not here. Dual banking, active accounts both in Philippine banks and back home. Exit strategy permanently maintained. They never cancel home country residency, driver's licenses, or professional credentials. Legal support, lawyers on permanent retainer for visa issues and tax complications. Health insurance, international coverage that works globally, not just Philippine-only policies. I met Catherine, a retired accountant from Sydney. She's been living in Tagaytay for 7 years, happy, healthy, financially stable. Her secret? She plans for absolute worst-case scenarios. She showed me her emergency protocol binder. Detailed action plans for medical emergencies, visa problems, political instability, natural disasters, banking crises, and family emergencies back home. Does it sound paranoid? Maybe. But Catherine is still here thriving while hundreds of others fled home broke. Strategy 2. They embrace being permanent outsiders. The successful expats don't try to become Filipino. They don't burn bridges back home. They consciously maintain dual identities and multiple location options. They learn Filipino culture and language to demonstrate respect, not to attempt impossible assimilation. They build genuine relationships but never become financially or emotionally dependent on them. They enjoy the Philippines but don't need the Philippines. That subtle distinction is absolutely critical. Strategy 3. They treat it like a high-risk investment. They assume everything will eventually go wrong. Multiple contingency plans for every critical system. Backup funds in multiple currencies and locations. Alternative residency options maintained continuously. They never bet their entire future on a single outcome or assumption about stability. Here's the brutal truth that gets me attacked in expat Facebook groups. Most people should absolutely not move to the Philippines long term. If you're over 66 years old, have less than 18 million Philippine pesos in liquid accessible assets, don't speak any Filipino language, have serious pre-existing health conditions, or you're running away from problems thinking geography will solve them, the Philippines will systematically destroy you. This isn't anti-Filipino sentiment. The Philippines is beautiful with genuinely warm people, but it is not a retirement paradise designed for unprepared foreigners with unrealistic expectations. The ones who succeed, they invested at least a year or two in serious research before moving. They hired competent lawyers and accountants. They maintained strong home country connections. They arrived with brutally realistic expectations. They treat the Philippines like high-risk investment. They prepare for worst-case scenarios. They hope for the best. They never bet everything on one outcome. Now, I've barely scratched the surface today. There's so much more you need to know before making this decision. In upcoming videos, I'll be exposing the new 2025 tax laws that are destroying expat finances, the cryptocurrency scams specifically targeting retirees, the condo oversupply crisis and why your investment is worthless, political risk and what happens during civil unrest, the visa agent scams costing people millions, provincial living versus Metro Manila, the hidden costs, the overseas Filipino worker, OFW, family dynamic that every foreign partner needs to understand, healthcare insurance, which companies actually pay claims, the real estate schemes in Palawan and Siargao, how to actually build a sustainable expat life here. If this video opened your eyes to realities you hadn't considered, smash that like button and share it with anyone thinking about moving to the Philippines. This information could literally save them from financial devastation. Subscribe and hit the notification bell because this series is going to expose everything the tourism industry doesn't want you to know. No sugarcoating, no fake paradise promises, just brutal truth about expat reality. Drop a comment below. Are you still planning to move here after watching this? What shocked you most? What specific topics do you want me to investigate next? Remember, paradise is a marketing term invented to sell flights and condos. Reality is what you make it through preparation and smart decisions. But succeeding in the Philippines requires extensive preparation, genuine respect, and brutally realistic expectations about challenges you'll face. The dream can become reality, but only if you're prepared for the nightmares too. Only if you have backup plans for your backup plans. Only if you never put yourself in a position where you have zero options left. Don't let the Philippines become your financial graveyard. Don't become another cautionary tale whispered about in expat bars. Be smart, be prepared, be realistic. Your future self will either thank you or curse you for the decisions you make today. Make the right choice.